Welcome to Playback, the podcast about the Billboard Hot 100 and what's trending in the music industry. I'm singer-songwriter Nina Blue.
My name's Cati Landry. I'm also a singer-songwriter.
And I'm Joseph Benitez, aka Xander, singer, songwriter, producer.
All right, guys, we have a special episode, all Barbie themed, about the Barbie soundtrack. So we're just going to do a quick overview, a quick summary of what's going on the Billboard Hot 100 Top 10. K-Pop by Travis Scott, Bad Bunny, and The Weeknd premiered at number 7. Barbie World by Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice re-entered the top 10 at number 8, and Flowers actually dropped out to number 11. Other than that, all of the top songs just kind of like got up and shuffled around a bit. But the top three songs are country. What do you guys think about this moment for country right now?
I think it's really interesting. I think we're seeing, I haven't listened to the number one song yet, but from the other two, I've heard them and I like them a lot. They're very different flavors of country. I think you're hearing like a push towards like really fresh modern sounds, and then also a little bit of like 90s kind of referencing, and particularly because Luke Combs is doing a Tracy Chapman cover that really cements that it's a bit of a 90s sound. But I think Last Night is really fun and fresh and modern and super catchy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting because I think this is the first time that this has happened since the chart's inception itself. But, we talked about this last week. I wasn't so crazy about the Jason Aldean song, but the other two I really love, particularly Fast Car, because it is a reference, it's cover of a song that is like super near and dear to my heart. And I think a lot of other singer and songwriters as well love that song.
I think a lot of us can agree on that. We kind of covered the number one hit last week ad nauseum, and I'm just gonna leave it at this. I hope I'm not covering it next week. Moving on.
Yeah.
Speaking of some more controversial news, we won't be talking about the Lizzo song on the soundtrack today. She has been accused of sexual harassment and fostering a hostile work environment, and she and her production company are being sued by three of her former dancers. There are numerous charges, including sexual, religious, and racial harassment, disability discrimination, assault, and false imprisonment. A lot of the media is choosing to focus on like the fat shaming aspect of this when really there's so much more in this suit that is so vile. Katie, like, what do you think this means for Lizzo's fans?
Oh my gosh, it's such a surprise. I mean, I think that at this point we're kind of used to having a bit of cynicism around people with power. Like we've seen a lot of people, prove to be kind of corrupt and abuse that power. But I think that this is a really shocking twist because this was someone who represented a bit of a reprieve from that for a lot of people. And it's kind of standing up and all that. So it's sad. I'm really sorry to hear about all of this, and you know, just disappointed for what it must feel like for the people who were big fans of her and really love her music. It's always
Jay, what do you
hard.
think this is? Jay, what do you think this means for like stan culture? Like, should we continue to stan people? Like, so many people are going to be let down by this.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that this is very unfortunate because the whole reason people were standing her was because of like the whole, anti-body shaming, loving yourself movement, and I think that's really why they're choosing, especially on TikTok. I see you guys. That's why they're trying to make all the jokes about her, fat shaming other people, even though she herself is a bigger girl. So I think it's really bringing to light where just the fact that you never know what somebody's actually like behind closed doors. And I'm not saying that I necessarily already believe all these allegations, but just more and more stuff seems to be uncovered. So it's kind of sad to hear.
Lots of people are corroborating the stories. It
Yeah.
is developing, but we're going to move on to some more fun news. Katie, you brought this up earlier. Ryan Gosling has his first Billboard Hot 100 entry with I'm Just Ken, and we actually didn't prepare to talk about it.
Sadly, I am covering Ryan's other musical contribution to the world, basically. I mean, we could say Barbie, but I mean, I think it's been a big week for him. Yeah, this is super funny. And I love when like when Bradley Cooper was like number one on the Hot 100. It's just kind of like funny because like so many musicians would like cut off a limb for that position, and Bradley Cooper's like,
Yeah.
cool.
Here I am.
I guess,
Yeah,
yeah.
for
Like,
sure.
so it's really always kind of funny. And Ryan Gosling, he's making Canada proud. We love him. And he does a great job in the movie.
We've got a talented group of Canadians making the rounds lately.
Go Canada. Yeah, I think the reason why we didn't really choose to touch on that song is because it's one that you kind of have to watch the movie to really thoroughly appreciate all of its cheesy glory, for sure, in my opinion
It's
anyway.
camp, it's high camp, and we do
Yes.
love it in association with the movie. Real quick, before we get into the soundtrack, we want to say that we stand with the WGA and SAG-AFTRA who are on strike and hard at work picketing. We don't want any of our content to be misconstrued as promoting the movie. This is simply a discussion about a huge pop culture moment. If at any point we say something that sounds like we're scabbing, please know it is not our intention. We simply want to celebrate the creators of this film and soundtrack because it is an absolute triumph. With that being said, hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbies.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi.
Okay. So the top song that is coming out of this is actually Barbie Roll with Nicki Minaj, which is a big surprise. But Jay, first let's talk about Mark Ronson is the executive producer of the album. What do you think he contributes to this project?
Yeah, for me, Mark has definitely always been one of my favorite producers because I think he really has a signature kind of sound, which for me is the mark of a great producer. Where with him, he really takes like these classic sounds and modernizes them. Even though it's, an older aesthetic, he all of his recordings and productions sound super clean and the mixes sound fresh for sure. And I think that that's definitely heard throughout every song on this album. A lot of them call back to even older song forms, but you still hear them in like a new light and definitely like a modern take on all of that for sure.
I 100% agree. I feel like you can feel Ronson like throughout the album.
Yeah.
Katie, you and I were talking about like the diversity on this soundtrack. What do you think that says about the project?
Oh, I think it's been amazing. Like, there's so many different kind of styles and perspectives that are on the soundtrack. Like in particular, I think bringing Ice Spice in was such a fun and modern contribution to the track to the album. Drill is kind of like new on the world stage. It's been big for a while in both the UK and in cities around like the New York and all that. But Ice Spice is one of the first mainstream artists to really pop off in that style, particularly female rappers. And I think that it's really fun and amazing to hear that represented on the album, along with other, there's some legendary artists like Charlie XCX has really built up her reputation over like 10 years. It's just a really fun mix. It's super cool.
Yeah, I think Greta picked absolutely the right person. I read this story that like Mark Ronson got reached out to with just like one word and it was Barbie question mark. And he had a week to put together like a tentative disco track that the cast could dance to, which eventually became like Dua Lipa's track.
Oh,
Um, I just want to say, like, I'm so impressed with the movie and the soundtrack for including so many diverse actors and artists and representing everyone, despite Barbie being like a traditionally blonde, white, heterosexual figure. I think it's why so many people are forming such an emotional connection to the film, and I think it's like really seen in the soundtrack. What do you guys think?
She's everything. They lived up
She
to
yeah.
is
that.
everything.
I think everyone's seeing themselves in this story, which is really beautiful. Or like most
Okay.
of the audience are.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Okay. So there are 17 tracks on this soundtrack. There's no way we could cover that all in one episode. It would just get way too tedious. So we have like our top six picks, I guess our playback picks of the week. And I just wanted to start by talking about Barbie World with Nicki Minaj and like Katie said with Ice Spice. That was such a great way to like breathe some new energy into this. And let's be honest, what would the soundtrack be without Nicki? Katie, you brought that up earlier. Like the Barbs. What would the Barbs do?
I mean, I don't think we would all be having a peaceful day. I think there would be a lot of upset. Rightfully so. I'm supporting of that. That I think the Barbs were right, that Nikki needed to be honored because she's kept Barbie like in the presence of pop culture and always had fun with it and honored it. So she deserves that spot.
100%. Yeah. So I fell down a rabbit hole while looking into this song. As we know, it samples the song Barbie Girl by the Denmark Europop band Aqua, which was a huge hit in the 90s.
Yep.
It had a big backlash, though, from Rolling Stone readers who actually voted it the worst song in the 90s. But Margot Robbie begged for this song to be included, and I love the way that this song turned out with Nicki and Ice Spice. They're a dynamic duo, and I want to see so many more collabs from them. But Mattel originally hit the band Aqua with a huge lawsuit, as well as their like record label MCA, and it was like it was so ugly. MCA countersued for defamation, and Aqua called out Mattel like in their Eurovision performance. Like it got like so much bad blood. And after 5 years of this suit, the judge said the parties are advised to chill. That is a direct quote.
That's so
Wow.
official. I love it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna use that. Very well.
The parties are advised to chill.
Yes.
So there's actually kind of this like magical thing that happened when the Nicki Minaj Ice Spice version premiered. It debuted at number 7, which is the exact same spot on the exact same week that Aqua premiered on in 1997. So that's kind of fun.
Look at Jesus. Wow. Won't he do it?
The song is like less than 2 minutes long, which I think is in its favor because I actually kind of started to get sick of that sample on loop. Like I really wanted some breathing room where I could just hear Nicki or just hear Ice Spice. What did you guys think?
Well, I found one of the most interesting parts in the song is when that drops out and it kind of switches from the drill beat as well. It's like the drill beat really emphasizes the hi-hats, and then we kind of get this section in each of their verses that is like almost a bit of a house beat sound where it's like got a kick drum emphasis
Mm.
to it, and it picks up, and that part really energizes the song. So yeah, I think that I don't know, they could have used maybe a little bit more of that throughout just to really like if they wanted to turn it into a big, longer, more extended kind of club banger, something like that would be super, super cool.
I agree with you. Like those portions that you just spoke of were my favorite parts of the song. I think the chorus is great. It's short, sweet, to the point. It's hooky, but it's actually like drowned out by this sample.
Mm.
And but samples are here to stay. If that's anything that we can pull from this song, I mean, Nikki herself has had a lot of success with samples, including Anaconda and Super Freaky Girl. So, I mean, samples are where it's at these days, guys.
That.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
they're good collaborators. Like I love Princess Diana. That's one of my favorite songs of the year so far.
I do too. I hope to hear more from Nikki and Ice Spice because it's just great, and we love when two brilliant women team up for a hit. So, speaking of brilliant women, there is a lot of disco influence on this soundtrack. Katie, you wanted to speak to that and talk about Dance the Night by Dua Lipa?
I sure do. Yeah. So Dance the Night is the song that Dua Lipa contributed to the soundtrack. It's a pure disco song. And in the film, it appears in a dance floor sequence, which is one of my favorite parts of the movie. So the song is written by Dua Lipa, Andrew Wyatt, Mark Ronson, and Carolyn Aylin, and was produced by Ronson, Wyatt, and the Picard brothers. It really reflects that glitzy sheen of both Barbie Land and the sonic realm of Dua's most recent album, which was heavily influenced by disco and dance music in general. The strings and the falsetto background and vocals really reminded me of Saturday Night Fever and the Bee Gees, especially which Greta mentioned as a reference for this movie. So I thought that was
Mm.
really cool. And the song lyrically is simply about transcending heartbreak through dance, which is like the thesis statement of disco. It's somewhat reminiscent of her hit song Levitating, which also promises an escape through the power of love, although this one is a little more heavy-handed in its reference to disco, which I think is kind of a Mark Ronson move to make, like really, really pull on that classic genre and bring it new again. Artistically, it's a purified example of the kind of song that has become Dua's signature sound in recent years. She is nothing if not consistent. And right now, since artists are so overly personal and confessional and kind of sound like they wrote lyrics with their therapist on speed dial, this focus on crafting perfectly polished hits really makes Dua stand out as a fun, vibrant figure in pop music today. And I love that. It's kind of like how Barbie Land is such a nice escape from the real world. And I almost wish the movie had let us spend 2 hours just in Barbie Land, relishing in dream houses and Chanel and dance parties. I also think the kind of pop star we get from the likes of Dua Lipa basically gets cemented in and around disco era, like Cher and Diana Ross being early examples, and of course Donna Summer, then through to Madonna, up to Britney Spears, and even early Rihanna and Ariana Grande club records. So I love that Dua is embracing that tradition. And it does correlate well with the time frame that Barbie's signature aesthetic is established, as all things pink, in
Mm.
particular, Superstar Barbie is a disco doll. So I would love to briefly look at this shared history as it relates to music and culture's sort of fraught relationship with femininity. I think it's essential to have a disco song on this album because Barbie and disco both are really charged examples of how time and time again, high feminine aesthetics are misunderstood and vilified culturally as fake, cheap, immoral, dangerous, and corrupting forces. The famous dismissal of disco, known as the disco sucks movement, it still exists to some extent with the cultural ambivalence toward fun, escapist pop music today. But it really comes from a discomfort with celebrating and honoring femininity or anything too girly.
Mm.
So, artists like Donna Summer or Chic or ABBA, who are now considered cornerstones of pop music, were really disrespected and misunderstood at the time. And Barbie has also been vilified a ton in popular culture. We saw that argument in the movie that Barbie is bad for women and girls. I think this correlates to the belief held by some people that anything too feminine and centered on girls' aspirations and dreams is vain, shallow, and can lead young women astray. And unfortunately, these accusations are often leveled by women towards other women based on a misunderstanding of what strength can look like and on cheap fear mongering that pits women against one another. You see it in the dismissal of artists who are too girly or too sexy. Like one example that came to my mind was Dolly Parton, who would have been a great addition to the soundtrack in
Oh,
another
I
life.
would have loved that.
For sure.
And she actually has an album called Backwoods Barbie, which I didn't know, and I'm going to listen to it after this. But she faced a lot of that kind of flack early on in her career. Like I remember my mom telling me older women, my mom always loved Dolly, and older women would say stuff like, "That's not the kind of woman you want to look up to or associate yourself with." And this was in spite of Dolly's extraordinary success on her own terms as a songwriter and her very long private marriage and her clear sense of business acumen. So she was still read in this really shallow way. And she did prove all the haters wrong just by remaining true to herself rather than cowering to criticism. She wore fake nails, big hair, and a full face of makeup, but she still wrote one of the biggest hit songs of the 20th century on the same day that she also wrote Jolene, which is another one of her biggest hits. The first one is, of course, I Will Always Love You.
Mm.
But you do see this accusation thrown around a lot at anything where there is a focus on sort of, aestheticism and femininity, like fashion is another example. People love to dismiss these worlds as fake and bad because they celebrate things that I guess other segments of society don't always make room for or celebrate. And I think that these are all things that tend to be really popular with groups of people who feel very misunderstood and unwelcome in society at large. One of the most common dismissals of pop music and this whole type of, like feminine glamour is that it's frivolous and dumb and meaningless, and that real art puts authenticity, grit, and struggle at its center. But this take is really, pretty dehumanizing. The people who tend to gravitate towards these aesthetics do really understand suffering and often have endured a lot of it themselves. And they use this sort of world as an escape and, a place to come and have fun and be free of the problems of everyday life. Um, And, there's a warmth and depth and kindness that lives in this type of art alongside the fun, free-spirited boldness that it also celebrates. And I think that's something that every person and certainly every woman should learn to love, honor, and celebrate. So I'm really happy that it was included in the film. I remember having friends whose moms wouldn't let them play with Barbies, and they were worried that it would make them fake, and this artificial world would corrupt them, and that didn't work. First of all those girls I knew ended up becoming, as soon as they were old enough that they could be as girly as they wanted to, they were buying Barbies just to satisfy that inner child, and they were wearing as
Mm.
much hair and makeup and everything as they wanted. But for myself, Barbie was always a dream space and a creative outlet. And so, my Barbie, I had the Barbie tour bus, and she was always on a world tour wearing really cute outfits with her band and her backup singers. So I think I was manifesting. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say on that subject. I don't know if you guys have anything to add. It's been a safe haven and an escape for a lot of people where you could go inside that world and dream.
I agree with that. I mean, my mom really told me that she had like a moral dilemma of, do I let my daughter play with Barbies? And she said the first time I ever went down the pink aisle was with you. And but like Barbie allowed me to act out my fantasies, and in a world where we have like most of our representation is male centric and women are often like the side character, they're the supporting character. Like it allowed me
Mm.
to put myself central in my dream central in my own story. And so I think, we're always gonna, I hope not that we're always gonna demonize like really feminine aspects. Like Dolly Parton, who's one of the most prolific songwriters of all time, but how many times like do men dismiss her with a joke about her boobs, right? Like, and she's
I
often boiled down to that, which is so unfair. But what I love that you mentioned, Katie, if you look at the lyrics of this song, they are really escapist. They are talking about like that pain that we feel, but I'm going to dance anyway. I'm going to enjoy. And that is a very human experience.
It's overcoming, like that's the thing I think gets misinterpreted a lot, is like this song is about overcoming hard times and finding strength in the midst of them. And I think that's a huge disco sentiment, and a pop music sentiment in general. um and I think a lot of times people see that as like, oh, there's no depth, and it's like, no, that's not what this is about even remotely. And it's just really, that's such a lukewarm, boring take.
It is. I'm
Yeah.
over it. Jay, you and I talked about disco a little bit last week. Do you have anything to add to like this great disco track?
Not particularly, but I mean, I just cannot imagine being on the side of history where, you hated people like Dolly Parton and ABBA and Donna Summer, but it just goes to show that people like them and Barbie, like in the movie, the girly shall inherit the earth.
True
Yes.
that. And
Heck
have fun while
yes.
doing it.
Right? Like, ugh. Anyway, so I think the unanimous, like, kind of side, like, favorite song on this album was Speed Drive. Jay, you are a Charlie Stan. Take it away.
Yes, yes. I am, everybody has that pop girly that they ride or die for, and Charlie has been mine for like the past 4 or 5 years, and Spotify won't let me forget it, which is why I'm so excited to talk about this song, which is, of course, Speed Drive. And as Nina was talking about earlier, how samples are here to stay, you can definitely hear that in this song. There's like samples on top of samples on top of samples in this one. Especially the most obvious being the interpolation of Hey Mickey by Tony Basil in the chorus section, but the production is also heavily based on a song called Cobra Style, specifically Robin's version of it. And I think it's also really cool that she's specifically referencing to women, not necessarily the original version of Cobra Style, which, if you haven't heard that song before, it's that song that goes bum diggy gun ding dun diggy diggy dun. Like it has a really weird hook to it, but it's very melodic and catchy. But what I love most about this song in particular is its attention to something called prosody, which is something that all of us learned about when we were getting our master's degree in songwriting at Berkeley. And prosody is essentially just getting everything to make sense within the world that you're building, making sure that every element has an appropriate relationship to it. And this song, which is obviously about a car, sounds exactly like that with like the distorted bass and all the different elements added throughout. But even if you look at,
Yes.
yeah, even if you look at the just the melodic rhythm here, the contour that she does, the verses start off a little bit on the slower side, and then it really revs up in the chorus section, which, makes total sense for a song called Speed Drive. And I noticed this a lot with Charlie's work. She's definitely a concept heavy artist for sure.
She does such a great job with what became our favorite word after a while, which is prosody. And it is a
Yeah.
big part of what she incorporates in her songs. Like she comes up with a theme and she sticks to it. And I love that about her.
Mhm.
She loves cars too. There's a lot of
She
cars in
She
the
does.
do, she do. She is our generation's Mozart. Anyway,
song.
in my
Mozart
opinion.
If
with
Mozart
four
went
wheel
on
drive.
Bruce Springsteen and
Mhm.
then had a child, like because the car imagery is very Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, that's such a good
Yeah.
point. I love that. So one of my favorite songs in on the soundtrack is Watati by Carol G and featuring Aldo Ranks. We all know
Oh.
how annoyingly proud I am to be Panamanian American. And I want to thank Aldo Ranks, a fellow Panamanian, for shouting out our little isthmus in this massive movie. I thought it was hallucinating when I heard Panama, but no, we're in there. We're
Oh,
there, the representation. It brings a great like reggaeton flair to the movie. And let's be honest, like reggaeton is having a big moment in pop culture, don't you guys think?
definitely.
Yeah.
It has great flair to it, more Latina representation, which coincides with like America Ferrera playing a leading role and Ariana Greenblatt, who plays her daughter. For those who don't speak Spanish, the lyrics are basically about like Carol G inviting Aldo Ranks to go to a club with her and smoke, have a really good time. Like pretty just typical dance music theme lyrics.
Shakespearean.
Um, Shit, absolutely, yes.
Mhm.
I wish I could throw out a Shakespeare quote right now, but they escape me. Uh, so the rhythm, I don't know if you guys like notice this, is a little mid for a dance track. It feels more like something like you would play at a family barbecue and like you would find your tia like dancing in her chair with like a margarita in one hand
Mm.
and you invite her up. Like I don't think I would necessarily hear this in a club, but ultimately it works in the scene that it's written for, which as we learned is what matters most when writing to sync. What did you guys think about like how it fit with the movie?
I mean, I thought it was very fun. It's very hooky. I don't speak Spanish, unfortunately, so I couldn't understand the lyrics, but when you explain them, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds it's just a really fun track, honestly, and it's great. Yeah, love that they put that in there.
It made sense for the area where they were in too, which is
Mhm.
it's very smart.
The hook is really the instrumental part, which is, I think, really
Yeah.
important if you're going to be a Spanish speaking song, a Spanish language song trying to appeal to an English speaking culture. The chorus follows the melody and melodic rhythm established in the track, which I think is like one of the biggest ways to have a pop hit these days. Some might say it's a little too close, but I enjoy it. The rhyme operates on like a diminutive in Spanish, which is like that ito ita sound, and I think that's like something that can catch an English ear and keep
Mhm.
it interested. And I am seeing like reggaeton singers have a lot of success with that outside of like just using cognates to on the hook, like what Bad Bunny did with Didi Me Pregunto, like rhyming VIP and selfie and things that we say in Spanish. Like we would say like tomamos un selfie in VIP. Um, but I love the song the more I listen to it. It's really growing on me.
Definitely. I think that what you said is totally on spot for like international success as well. You need as many hooks as possible. So if you want to marry your lyrical hook, your melodic hook to what's going on in the instrumental, I think that's only going to work in, the person's favor for sure.
Moving on, Katie, you talked a lot about like the Gen X appeal that is in this with like these two songs pulled in Closer to Fine and Push. There are big moments in the film. What did you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting inclusion. I don't know if it's maybe like just Greta sort of nostalgia for her own like favorite music because she does love like there's I think in Lady Bird, there's like a Dave Matthews song as well. So that kind of sound is very like emotionally like heartfelt for her. But anyway, so both Barbie and Ken, yeah, they have these like kind of Gen X classics as theme songs in the context of the film. And they are, rock staples. Admittedly, I didn't really have a lot of familiarity with either of these songs before seeing the film, but it was pretty clear what they were trying to convey to the audience. For Barbie, we get this beautiful song called Closer to Fine by Indigo Girls, which was released in 1989. And it plays kind of as a road trip anthem throughout. And for Ken, we get an acoustic rendition of Push by Matchbox 20, which is performed by the one and only Ryan Gosling in a stunning showcase of his Kenergy. um,
Love the Kenergy.
yeah, so it's amazing. Both songs are performed on acoustic guitar in the film, and they reflect the characters' respective inner worlds. Barbie's is expansive, hopeful, melodic, and philosophical as she's searching for answers. And the opening lyric, I'm trying to tell you something about my life, maybe give me insight between black and white, reminds me of another film that we saw referenced for this one, which is The Wizard of Oz, the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And then that
Mm,
points us towards Dorothy going into the Technicolor dream world of Oz.
Oh my God, I did not pick up on that
I
association.
didn't either.
Yeah, like I think that, it's subtle, but it's there throughout the film. Really, just like I think that film is so influential. It's in a lot of different things. But
Hmm.
you see that, and I think this song, the imagery just corresponds really beautifully with that as well. And then the next section, a female harmony comes in, which kind of reminded me of how all the Barbies and their friendships really uplift and support the other Barbies. And it adds to the sing-along feel of the song too. And then the chorus is a really beautiful meditation on searching for answers, which I love because Barbie, that's like one of the main themes for her throughout the film. And just sort of that reassurance that that is okay comes through in the song. And I think that's really beautiful. Push, on the other hand, is super classic post Nirvana 90s grunge. Ryan Gosling seems aware of this song because he sings the song in a really good imitation of the lead singer of Matchbox 20. Um, but underneath that, actually, the lyrics are quite emotional and very, very like full of vulnerability and sadness, because I think that does speak to Ken's story in the film. He feels overlooked and dismissed, and so I think choosing that song was probably really intentional in that way. But the scene where Ken makes Barbie listen to himself perform Push for 4 hours on the beach while she is sitting there smiling, I'm like, Greta, that needed a trigger warning for those of us who dated poetic eyes who everywhere with them in college, because um, like, my God,
We
that
have
hit.
all dated that guy. That movie had like there were several trigger warnings where it's like, okay, I feel called out right now, and that was definitely one of them. Yes.
I know,
Yes. Serenading in as a concept sounds cool, but like actually doing it is kind of creepy. And then
Yeah, it's cringe. It is. But Katie, I never paid attention to the lyrics of that song until you brought it up. My
Mhm.
brother's favorite band when he was like younger was Matchbox 20. So I remember hearing
Yeah.
that song. But you're right, there's a lot of emotion in it that like kind of t speaks to Ken's experience, and it makes a lot of sense that it's his favorite song. And it speaks to like the detail orientedness of this movie.
completely agree. And it's funny because there's a lot of like I was thinking about I mean that song, I think after Nirvana there was a real opening of sensitivity in like particularly like male artists feeling comfortable being a little more like emotional in their lyricism and stuff like that. Like if you look at hair metal and all that, it doesn't exist there. And then Kurt really
Mm,
brings that into the fold. And I don't think we've ever really gone back from that point because there was such a deep level of respect for his artistry. But I think that the way that they well, another thing I was gonna say is like there's a great song by Hole called Doll Parts that would have been awesome included in the album, because I mean it's called Doll Parts and it's
mm.
Courtney Love's meditation on how how hard it is to try and exist and feel not perfect and live with your insecurities and just kind of ache as a person. And it's really, really beautifully written. Sort of reminds me of the thesis of this song or this film.
Yeah, and that makes actually an excellent segue into our next song. Jay, you wanted to speak to, I think, what was like the most emotional moment in the soundtrack, in the movie, and it's Billie Eilish's song, What Was I Made For?
Yeah, and it's funny. I got to talk about Speed Drive and this song, which are my two favorites off of the album, but for completely, they're worlds apart. So it couldn't be more different. But I think with this song in particular, especially because I heard the album outside of the context of the movie, so I watched it
Me
after.
too.
It really. I think it touched me in like sort of a different way because I just was able to put myself into it more. And, all of us here just graduated with our master's degrees, but that's always seen as like a celebratory moment. And yeah, it is happy because you finished and everything, but nobody really talks about the dread sometimes that comes associated with that, where it's like you kind of have the world at your palm, but you don't necessarily know exactly what you want. And I think that this song captures that so perfectly. I had read that Billie Eilish got to see a rough draft, a rough cut of the film before writing this song. And she said at first she really wanted to kind of capture every emotion that this character was going through. But ultimately, she ended up capturing something that she felt herself with this kind of feeling of inadequacy and just not necessarily knowing what it is that you actually want to do, which I think is a perfect reflection of Barbie herself within this film. Because in the beginning, we're told she's everything, she can do anything, but that doesn't necessarily know that she knows what she actually wants to do or who she actually wants to be, which I think is super relatable to just anybody watching it.
I think
Oh,
it was the most relatable aspect of the film,
Yeah,
actually. And you're right, Jay, like graduating, there's all this potential, and that's like this heart stop moment of like, oh my God, but what do I do next? And we were all talking about this earlier. We're independent artists, we're planning our releases, and it is a really nerve-wracking thing about like, what am I doing? Am I following what I'm meant to be doing? Am I, checking off the checklist, etc. And I love this song. I love the emotion behind it.
yeah.
Katie, did you have that like same experience when you listened to the song?
oh yeah, absolutely. I remember like when I first listened to it, it was early in the morning and I was just sitting and staring out my window at the big blue sky and that sense of sort of like openness and the poetic and philosophical beauty that the song holds was really, it really hit me. And I think this is going to be remembered as a really, really fine example of a Billie Eilish song. She's a beautiful songwriter, and her brother just make some, they do a lot of interesting work together, but occasionally they really strike on something magical. And this song is one of those example or is an example of that. And I love it. Yeah, I think it's super beautiful. The lyrics are really poetic, but still simple. And I think we also discussed that anyone can see themselves in the story of this song because the lyrics are open to interpretation,
Hmm.
but they do fit the narrative, not only of the film, but also just, I think Billy really connected in that moment as the lyricist and singer and really, really spoke to herself and by doing that to all of us in a really powerful way.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
interesting you mentioned that this is like a classic, which seems like a quintessential song for her. Because what the ironic part is this week, Bad Guy actually went diamond,
Right.
certified diamond. But if you've seen the video of this song, you kind of know that it showcases her kind of packing up her most iconic outfits and kind of moving on from that era. So I just think that that's very interesting that she was able to also visually capture that feeling of, oh, I don't know what my next step is, but I know I need to move on to something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've spoken about how female artists have this pressure that they have to constantly reinvent themselves. or
Mm,
else they go stale. I mean, look at
yeah.
Taylor Swift with all of her eras, and we constantly see like, oh, there's a new style emerging with this female artist, but we kind of want men to stay the same. And what do you guys
Mm.
think that like this song says about that journey as an artist?
Well, I think that ties back in even with like the point I made about disco and world building and escapism. I think that, maybe why maybe there's a pressure to transform constantly for female artists and everything, but I think also there's a little bit of people have fun with that. Like I think in the Eras tour, you're seeing this incredible world building that she's done with that experience. And that really does create such a powerful connection. Like I think of other artists of mine who are or other favorite artists of mine, and I'm really just like, I love the power of their storytelling and what they convey. And there definitely are male artists who do that very, very well also. But I think that yeah, it's definitely more of an incentive for women that they are like, okay, you have to like give us something new and all that. And I think Billie, like we catch her almost in between. Well, I mean, she's in between albums right now. But it's a real moment of honesty. And I think that's so powerful and beautiful. It sounds very different, but a song that I love that has a little bit of a similar kind of like turning point feel to it is Madonna's song called Live to Tell, which is off like one of her earlier albums that's a big commercial success. And it's got a lot of like, it's got True Blue and Open Your Heart and oh shoot, what's that one called? It's like Papa Don't Preach. I was like escaping me. So it's got a lot of hits on it. And then Live to Tell was a huge hit. It was kind of her first ballad that was a big hit song.
Mm.
But it's really different. It's her asking about like, can she tell everyone everything about herself and will she still feel, I don't know, like will she still have a safe place to land if she does that, right? And I think that those moments from these really larger than life artists are super interesting, and Billie's is so beautiful. It also does remind me a little bit of do you guys remember that song that Sarah McLachlan sang for Toy Story
That's
called
just
When?
what I was thinking of. Yeah, when she loved me. I was like,
Yeah,
I
Oh
haven't cried this hard in a theater since that fucking movie. I swear to God, Sarah
my God.
McLachlan, you're an asshole. You make me cry all the time. She's great. I love her as a songwriter, but
Love
she's
Sarah
she's
McLachlan.
an
She's
asshole.
from where I'm from, so love
fuck you,
her.
Sarah McLachlan. I love you.
How dare you?
Yeah, that song is so heartbreaking in a similar way that this one is, although they're very different. And yeah, just I love this what they've done with this song.
A lot of people might consider like Billie Eilish and her grunge style kind of antithetical to Barbie. But it fit so well. I mean, this was the scene, no spoilers, this is a safe space, but this is a scene where I swear to God, I just gave up on my mascara. I was like, I'm gonna be a mess walking out of this theater. It's just
Rip.
gonna happen.
It's
Rest
beautiful.
in
So
peace.
sweet. I loved the way that they honored like a lot of different people and different women's stories in that moment. That was really, really beautiful.
And Jay, do you have any final comments about this song?
Um, Not really, but I will say one of the lyrics that really touched me was the lyric about her crying, but don't tell my boyfriend about it because it really shows
Mm,
that perspective of that person that's always trying to hold things together. And a lot of the times in families, that's the mom.
Yeah.
You know what I
yeah.
mean? And that's especially powerful in that scene with her and Rhea Perlman, um, who kind of, in a way,
Oh,
they have that relationship if you think about it. So,
Mm.
definitely. Yeah, that was like that maternal moment in the film.
mhm.
It was great. It was beautiful. So do we have any like final words about the soundtrack, how we feel about it, anything like that, Katie?
I think it was really fun. I love that they put a big soundtrack out. I love like I feel like we haven't gotten as many of those in recent years, like the big blockbuster soundtracks, and
Yes.
I love them. I think like if you think about um I don't know, like Moulin Rouge, Lady Marmalade, like those ones I loved so much growing up. And then recently I can think of like when Kendrick curated the one for Black Panther, that was an amazing one. But this is
Mm.
probably my favorite one in a long time. I think that yeah, the artists they chose are all really fun and interesting and exciting. And I was so happy to see them included here.
Okay, you
Yes.
want to jump in?
Yeah, same. I think it fucking slaps. This album's so great. It'll make
It's so
you
good.
yeah, it'll lift you up. It'll make you feel pumped like with Speed Drive. It'll give you something like nice and dreamy to listen to like the Haim song that we didn't talk about and also Hey Blondie. But then it'll also just completely devastate and wreck you with the Billie Eilish song. So there's a little bit of everything and it's just like a roller coaster of emotions. It's great.
It was so thought out. I mean, so much credit to all of the artists, to Mark Ronson for being the executive producer. I will be listening to the soundtrack for years to come. And Jay, you're
Yeah.
right. Like the diversity of sound, the diversity of emotion, it speaks to the Barbie movie and it speaks to the Barbie audience as well.
Yes, definitely.
All right, guys, our final segment is our playback picks of the week. This week, it was completely a unanimous vote. Our pick is Mind's Eye by our very own Cati Landry. Katie, do you want to tell us a little bit about like the writing process behind the song? Give us a little behind the scenes.
Sure. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for choosing me. I'm honored and very grateful for the support. So Mind's Eye, I started writing while we were in school together. And I think I originally got the idea. I had the title written down for a long time, like probably over a year. And then I just really liked that phrase. And then, but I didn't want to just use it. Like I thought, oh, it has to feel natural, or else I don't like when it feels too much like you've written the title. That can be really annoying.
Mm.
Um, so then I was playing around with ideas, and that came to me, like the melody and the lyrics. And so then I, yeah, just really decided to keep working on it. And I was being mentored by the wonderful Bonnie Hayes at the time. And so I took it to her, and she really encouraged me and kept pushing me to keep working on it. And it was something that right away I loved because it felt really authentic to me. And uh, in the emotional way, I guess, where it reflected my um, sort of real world and my inner world that I've experienced. Like I think that it was, that mix of like when you're young and you're working odd jobs and just kind of having a lot
Mm.
of time where you're doing meaningless tasks in your day. And so you daydream a lot. Like I would dream about boys and my dream job and all those types of things. And where I wanted to go, like take my car and just drive, that type of stuff. And so I think that that daydreaming is a really big part of your life when you're young and still figuring things out. And there's a vulnerability to that though too, because life goes off script always. And so um I wanted to honor that in this song. And I think that, I think it got there, and I really ended up loving how it turned out. And then I was really lucky because I was introduced to the incredible producer, Neil Woganson, and I went down to LA and recorded the track with him and his band, who were Sean Maroney's on guitar and Ross Chait on drums. They were the nicest guys. We had so much fun together. We were in the studio for 3 days. And yeah, it came together really, really beautifully. It was just so much fun to make, which was a huge blessing. I felt super grateful for.
Nice.
I mean, this song is wistful, it's dreamy. It's a beautiful story that I think is super relatable. We've all had those moments where we like imagine our lives with a guy, whether it be like some big celebrity or just the guy that we had a crush on. Like this has a very like girl next door feel to it too, which I love. It's beautifully written. I'm so happy that you put it out. I've been excited to hear it like since I heard it the first time and listened to it as much as I wanted. Um, and it's phenomenal. Like I've loved this song from the very beginning, and it's vulnerable, and it's not like it's a good breakup song because it's not angry. It's just kind of accepting, and I think we need more of those kind of stories in
Right.
pop music. Especially like coming from female vocalists. Like I remember for a long time, I really felt like we couldn't say those kinds of things. And you do it, you just so well, and it works so well with your voice too. I
Yeah.
mean, you just sing the hell out of it.
Hmm.
Thank you so
It's,
much.
it's easy to have a on repeat. It's a great
Oh,
driving
It is.
song. Yeah, for sure.
It's got great contrast too, like between the verse and the chorus. Like I just love.
well, thank you. Well, I love that too, and I really appreciate it. I loved the way the arrangement that the guys and I worked on really came together, and in the studio right away, I could tell that they got the energy I wanted for the song. So it just was amazing, came together exactly how I wanted. So thank you.
Sometimes it's just like magic, you know?
True. And I think, with songs, there's an energy that lives in them. And as long as you honor
Mm,
that energy to the best of your ability, then you keep that pure thing at the center. And that was really what felt super exciting for me with this song.
hmm And
shout out
what
to
have you been
Bonnie.
doing? Oh yeah, for sure. So what has like promotion work been like for the song for all the other independent artists at home who are looking forward to going through the same process?
Well, I mean, it's unique and it's always kind of an interesting experience. I think that this time around I have been kind of just like really felt grounded because the song is so authentic to um my vision of my own artistry, and it reflects all the different things, all the different elements I wanted to honor. um so I think going into it I felt like, comfortable talking about it with everybody. And when you're starting out as an indie artist, there's a lot of like reaching out to people and trying to tell them about who you are or show them who you are. And if you're planted in your own soil doing that, I think it makes it a lot easier. And so this time it's been a really, really, good experience for me. I've met some really amazing people, and I feel fortunate. I've gotten some wonderful support. People have added it to their playlists, and
Nice.
people I don't know, but my friends message me telling me about, nice things people have said. So it's been really lovely.
My family loves the song too.
Oh, thank you, Nina's family.
Yeah. My little sister texted me. She's like huge Mazzy Star vibes.
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I love Mazzy Star so much. So
For
that
sure.
is great.
Jay, what did you think of Mind's Eye?
I thought it was great. Pretty much everything you said already. I thought it was so relatable to the point where I had a tough time listening to it at first because I was like, I'm going through something extremely like this right now. So let me come back to it. But I'm so happy that, I was able to. And I'm happy for you, Katie, as well, because, we got our asses kicked during that program when we had to write like those
Oh my,
those songs. So I'm like, I'm happy to see, the finished product of someone that went through the same kind of thing that the rest of us did.
It's
we really
totally inspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
guys. I'm so excited to hear what you guys come out with. That I know it's gonna be amazing.
Okay, Katie, how can our listeners best support you?
Well, I am on every streaming service as Cati Landry, Catilandry. And so you can check me out there. And yeah, what else? Let's see. I think the best way to listen to the song is to roll the windows down in your car and go for a long summer drive. That's what I was envisioning as sort of the ambiance when I wrote it. So go do that for me, won't you? And yeah, I'm also on all social media, same name, Cati Landry.
Love to hear that, Katie. We're so super, super, super proud of you. Do you guys have any like closing for the episode? Any closing comments?
Mm. I mean, I just think that, I'm excited with where music is going. I think we're heading in a really interesting direction. And yeah, this album has been lots of fun to look at for that reason.
Absolutely. Jay?
Yeah. Um check out the album and the Barbie movie itself. It's great. My favorite part is when she kills Osama bin Laden. That's the best part of that movie. For sure.
Jay, we said we weren't gonna spoil
We said
anything.
no
Oh,
spoilers. We got all
sorry.
the way to the end of the
Sorry.
All right, guys, make sure to stream Cati Landry's song, Mind's Eye. Check out our playback picks of the week on Spotify and have a great rest of your week and go do some good in the world. Love you guys.